Hello, and a big warm welcome to you all today, everybody tuning in and those who are watching this replay afterwards. My name is Tanya Diggory. I'm the founder and director of Karma. We are a UK-based global training organization supporting entrepreneurs, freelancers, and business teams to prevent burnout and nurture good mental health and well-being. And I'm so excited to be joined by the beautiful Michelle Maidenberg today. We're going to do a little intro in a moment, but hello, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, so nice to be here and to meet everybody. I wish I could see all of you.
Oh, it's so lovely to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us. And this marks a very special time of the year for both of us, as you can tell by both our accents. In the UK, we are celebrating Mental Health Awareness Week this week, and in the US, it is Mental Health Month. So just to give a little bit of context as well about those two awareness raising initiatives. So the Mental Health Foundation in the UK set the theme every year for Mental Health Awareness Week, and this year the theme is set as anxiety, which is the key topic that we are exploring today with the help of the lovely Michelle. And focusing on anxiety for this year's Mental Health Awareness Week, the Mental Health Foundation are hoping that it will increase people's awareness and understanding of anxiety by providing information on the things that can help prevent it from becoming a problem, and understanding when it actually can be like a small, useful drive to get you to focus and pay attention and take action on something. So Michelle's going to explore all of that with us today. And with Mental Health Month, Mental Health America cite that the purpose around Mental Health Month is to get everybody to challenge themselves to examine their world and how it can affect your overall health. And their slogan is take some time to look around and look within, which I think is really beautiful. So without further ado, I'm just going to do a brief introduction to Michelle. Such an impressive lady. So Michelle maintains a private practice in Harrison, New York, which is where she's based. And she is also the co-founder and clinical director of the non-profit organization Thru My Eyes. Michelle is adjunct faculty at New York University, teaching a graduate course in mindfulness practice. Love that. She is a board of directors member at the Boys and Girls in Mount Vernon and is a member of the American Red Cross crisis team. She serves on the board of directors of the Westchester Trauma Network in Westchester, New York as well. To top all that off, Michelle is also dedicated and very much invested in mental health and well-being advocacy in general, and is the author of two books, Free Your Child From Overeating, 53 Mind-Body Strategies for Lifelong Health, and also Ace Your Life, Unleash Your Best Self and Live the Life You Want. Michelle is also, can you believe there's more, a TEDx speaker, and her talk is called Circumventing Emotional Avoidance. And she's also a blogger for Psychology Today. So, big praise to Michelle. Thank you for being here.
All right.
So how have you found Mental Health Month so far, and this being Mental Health Awareness Week here, celebrating the theme of anxiety? How's that all been for you?
It's so prevalent in so many people. And, as part of my talk, I'm going to explain what anxiety is, because I think there's a lot of myths around anxiety, and a lot of people don't really have a clear understanding of what that is. It's thrown around. It's like a very common lingo. I'm anxious, I'm stressed, I'm worried. But we don't really understand what anxiety is. And when we talk about anxiety, more therapeutically, we're talking about the brain, really the structure, the neurological, and biological structure of the brain. And it's really important to know about that.
Absolutely. Well, I won't let our attendees and those watching this at a later date wait any longer. Let's dive right into it. Thank you so much for being here today. And I really can't wait to see what you've got in store for us as well. So I'm going to let you take the stage. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. So I did put together a PowerPoint, which I'm going to show everybody, because I feel like sometimes having a visual is helpful in terms of focusing. And because this talk is really, I have to say, so short, because I could be speaking about this for hours and hours, I'm going to ask, if anybody has any questions, you could definitely put it in the chat and, hold on to them till the end. And I'll definitely, have a couple of minutes at the end to answer, specific questions on anxiety. Again, we won't get to everything because there's not enough time, but I'm always happy to come on again if it's warranted and of course helpful. So without further ado, I'm going to just put up and share my screen. Okay. Okay, so of course, our talk today is on how to understand and manage anxiety. And it's really important, like I said, to understand the neurobiology and how it contributes to our anxiety. So again, I have, some verbiage up there, but I'm going to really just speak out loud and give you some more information about it. And according to the National Institute of Mental Health and the Anxiety Depression Association of America, and again, I don't know the stats for the UK, so I am going to say that. I'm speaking, specifically for the US at this moment. But anxiety disorders affect 40 million adults each year, which if you think about that rate, it's considerably high. And that's 19.1% of the population of adults 18 and older. And what's more alarming is that it affects 31.9% of adolescents between the ages of 13 and 18. And unfortunately, untreated teens are at risk for poor academic performance, decreased social success, and a higher probability of engaging in substance use and maladaptive coping skills. So when we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about, serious consequences and ramifications. And again, we're talking about untreated anxiety. We're talking about chronic stress and chronic anxiety that leads to a lot of physical, emotional, consequences over time. So I do want to talk a little bit about what is anxiety, because that's a huge question. And the way that we need to think about it is really how it's affecting our nervous system. So when we have anxiety, it's prompted by this flight or fight response, which is specific to our nervous system. And what ends up happening is it releases adrenaline and cortisol into our central nervous system when we go into a state of anxiety. And from here, our sympathetic nervous system, which is a subpart of the central nervous system, responds to a situation with unfamiliarity, fear, or danger. Now, our brains are wired to avoid discomfort and to secure our safety. Okay, so to, again, alleviate any kind of danger. And when the amygdala, and again, I'm not going to talk too much about this, just a little brief amount of it, because it could be very science heavy. The amygdala is the part of the brain that receives this external information, and it's responsible for initially processing it in order to respond accordingly. So just to summarize, we have the part of the brain, which is the amygdala, which is our feeling center. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking and executive functioning brain, which is the part of our brain that helps us to process decision-making. And what ends up happening when we go into that flight or fight response and we have that sympathetic nervous system overactive is our amygdala, if you could imagine, becomes very formative, and it really hijacks the prefrontal cortex. So we are reacting and acting from a place of feeling as if we are in danger. We are in threat of danger. And our thinking mind, which allows us to process, again, becomes really in the background, and we really can't tap into that. And there's no integration when we're in those moments of high, alert states. The reason why it's important to know all of this, and then sometimes it could lead us to be either emotionally aroused and also physiologically aroused. So if some of you get into states of anxiety where you're feeling dizzy or shortness of breath, it could be nausea, right? Because it affects our GI tract. It could be all of these different symptoms that kind of come up when we're in a state of anxiety, which is very, very natural for many people. And the reason why it's important to understand that is because we don't have control over that. Our body literally takes over, it usurps power over us. So when we try to control it, which is what most of us try to do, guess what happens? It only exacerbates and intensifies the anxiety. And then we get into this very vicious cycle and spiral of, we have thoughts about our thoughts, we have feelings about our feelings, we have thoughts about our feelings, and feelings about our thoughts. And we go down this, again, vicious cycle and spiral. Now, what is anxiety? So it really has to do with the way our brains are wired. So if I ask you, do you ever have racing thoughts where you feel like your mind is going, 100 miles an hour? Or ruminate or perseverate, which means that we have something in our mind and we can't get it out. Or overthinks. So we have maybe a thought and then it kind of branches out to another thought and to another thought. Worrying or catastrophizing, right? We may have a worry, thinking about the future. We may have regret about the past. We may also catastrophize. So we'll have one thought and then it spirals into the worst case scenario. Those are all ways that we exhibit anxiety. And some of you may check off one of those, and some of you may check off several of them. Now, we could be very susceptible to anxiety, and contributors to anxiety we could have a genetic predisposition to anxiety. In other words, it could be in our family, and that readily happens. It has to do with our brain chemistry. So some of us, again, I know myself, I'm an empath. And when I feel my feelings, it's on a very intense level. So I am more prone to the average person to have anxiety because of my physiology. Environmental stress, it has to do with what's going on around us. So if we're in an environment where there's war, unpredictability, etc., we're going to be also more susceptible, obviously, to anxiety. Drug withdrawal or misuse. So again, can be, when we have these other factors that affect our biology and also our environment and also how we socialize. Medical conditions, there are certain medical conditions that could also contribute to anxiety. And all of these put us at risk. So it's important to know that too. I can't tell you how many people, and this is, fascinating to me, how many people have gone through their lives, and I see adults or I see young adults where they're either misdiagnosed or they have literally overcompensated for their anxiety throughout their entire life. And it's gotten to a point where it's either manifesting itself in a way where it inhibits their functioning, or they are so riddled with anxiety that it's, again, overarching into their relationships or manifesting itself in ways that are, considerably distressing and where they're struggling. And when we do like a deep dive and we do, kind of a developmental history, what's really interesting is I'll ask them questions from their childhood, and they'll tell me about, let's say, attachment issues that they had with their parents, or separation issues. They'll tell me about really significant social issues that they'll have, when they were socializing with their peers or trying to get into intimate relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very clear that over time, because of these maladaptive coping skills, such as, which is what we all do, is we try to distract, we try to avoid, we try to get rid of these anxious thoughts and feelings. And when we do that, what ends up happening is it just intensifies. And I'm going to show you a couple of different metaphors for what I'm talking about. So I don't know if you've seen this, but this is called a Chinese finger stick. Okay. And what we know about these, if you put your fingers in there, and if I ask you, how do you get out of this? And some of you may have used this before, but if you don't know, our inclination is to pull outwards, because when we try to get out of a bind, we pull out. Now, what you know about this is if you pull outside of this, it actually tightens around your fingers and it makes it impossible for you to get out of this finger trap. So what we need to do, if we want to get out of this, is we need to lean forward, let's say, right? And jimmy ourselves out very gently, and then we could actually release. Now, this is true for a lot of our behaviors in general. And I use another example of quicksand. If you're stuck in quicksand, again, your inclination would be, right, to struggle your way out of it, to swim really, really quickly to try to get to the surface. What we know about quicksand is if you try to do that, guess what's going to happen? You will sink, and that will be it. So it's going against the grain. It's doing something in the opposite direction than we're used to doing. And it's allowing us to just be and to be accepting of what's going on for us in our minds and our body. And that is very, very counterintuitive to how we typically behave. So it's again, it's really relearning your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your anxiety, and also how you want to be, and really thinking about, again, how we really want to be our best self and really react and act from our values rather than our thoughts and feelings. And one thing that I want to emphasize, and I can't say it enough, is we cannot control our thoughts and feelings no matter how hard we try. The only thing that we can control is our behavior. And I'll give you another example. So if I ask you to think of a number, and we'll use the number 2 as an example, and I say to you, whatever you do before we end today, I want you to get the number 2 out of your mind. I want you to completely forget about the number 2. Do whatever you have to get the number 2 out of your mind. Keep doing it. How are you doing? Are you able to get the number 2 out of your mind? What is your mind doing as I'm asking you to forget the number 2? So ideally what it's doing, in order to forget the number 2, it's remembering the number 2. And in order to remember the number 2, it doesn't allow us to forget the number 2. So if I saw you from a week from now, and I asked you what that number was, you would remember the number 2. So when you're saying to yourself, or you're giving suggestions to other people to get thoughts and feelings out of their minds, it's the same thing that I just instructed you. It is impossible to do. And then you beat yourself up for why it is that you can't get those thoughts out of your mind. Now, if you think about a child, right? A child's getting anxious. They're getting, again, very hyper aroused, they're tantruming, etc., because they're really uncomfortable and anxious. And we say to them, stop thinking about that or stop behaving that way. And they can't. They literally cannot do it because their brain doesn't allow them to. Imagine the level of distress that they're sitting with in that moment about themselves, because I can't do this. I'm expected to, and I can't. And I should be able to because my mom is telling, for example, or dad, my mom is telling me that I should. So what's wrong with me that I can't? And then again, sitting with, what's wrong with me? I seem to be different than everybody else. Nobody else seems to be bothered with this. So you could think about over time, cumulatively, how that could affect self-confidence. And also the propensity to avoid and distract over time. And the biggest issue that I find, I have to say, is avoidance. For people who perpetually have intense anxiety, there's a tremendous amount of avoidance that go along with that. And I see that, unfortunately, unfold, in children, adolescents, young adults, and adults as well. So instead of challenging themselves, they tend to avoid situations that increase or intensify their anxiety, which is very counterproductive, of course. So just a little bit more about what the anxiety does to our bodies. And it's, again, I don't want to get into the science of it because you could also, kind of learn about that and look that up. But I'm going to just kind of go up. So how does anxiety show up? It shows up by us judging, evaluating, assessing, criticizing, and that's the kind of mind that we have. Now, when we have an experience over time, what happens is it gets really fixated and locked into our memory center. And interestingly enough, our minds cannot discriminate or assess if something happened one time or happened 100 times. So if you have an event, let's say a traumatic event or something that was, significant to you that happened, your mind will be wired to protect you in the future, no matter what. And it will think that you're constantly in threat or danger of that happening again. So when it makes that natural association, it is going to go into that hypervigilance. And your mind is just trying to help you. It's not trying to harm you, even though it feels that way. And we really, unfortunately, end up having this very contentious relationship with our mind because of the anxiety that it creates, which could be somatic feelings in our body. It could be negative thoughts in our mind. And that could be, again, we could develop like an aversion or phobia to that over time. So the last thing that I did want to say about that, and then we'll get into a little bit of, what to do about this and to give you, steps, because that's really the crux of what I really want to convey to you. And there's so much to be said about all of this, of course. Like I said, we could be here all day. So there's also safety behaviors, that we develop in order to accommodate our anxiety. And that could be, for example, if you have social anxiety, it could be staying quiet in social situations. If there's, let's say, bringing a water bottle, let's say, to every event that you come to. And again, that's your safety measure, right? That allows you to feel safe. Now, those things are helpful in the moment, but what happens if you forget your water bottle one day? Guess what? You'll be in extreme panic. So it's not fail-safe. So we don't want to have, we want to be conscientious of not having those safety behaviors. We really want to challenge ourselves and expose ourselves to the things that are actually making us feel anxious so that we could learn that we could have confidence in our own ability. We don't have to rely on a thing or a person or anything to be able to manage our anxiety, that it is within us, that we are able to do it individually and systematically. So one of the things that is helpful is we want to create space between the thinking and doing, and that allows us to actually expand, and it allows us to have flexibility in our thinking, in our behaviors. And what I always bring up, and I teach a mindfulness, it's how to integrate mindfulness in clinical practice at NYU. And it is a really helpful way to help your mind have that expansion. And it does replenish gray matter in your brain that allows you to get to a resting state and to be in the present moment and have present moment awareness, so that you're not instinctively reacting from your anxiety, but you're acting from your values. And that's really where you want to be reacting from in order to live your best life. So, one of the things that Richard Davidson says, and he's a neuroscientist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, is it's really about discovering what the true nature of our mind is. It's more of an exploration, an investigation, an opening, a kind of radical honesty about who it is that we are. And that is what we always want to do. So I developed these 8 steps to take when disruptive thoughts arise. And this is, again, just one little tiny skill that I teach, but there are so many of them in order to help us. So one thing is, thoughts are not facts, they are just thoughts. And I actually have a sign on my door that says, don't believe everything you think. A lot of our thoughts are distorted. And again, based on the way we perceive things. And, a good example of that is if you have a pet, like a dog, and we mentioned that I have 4 dogs. When you come to the door after, let's say, a long day of work, and you come to your dog, how do they react to you? Or they are so excited to see you. They jump and they bark and they're like licking you, and they're so gleeful that you're there. Now, they're not riddled with thoughts. Oh my goodness, are you going to feed me today? What food are you going to feed me? Are you going to feed me the same amount that you fed me yesterday? No, because they're not judging and criticizing and evaluating like we do as humans. They are perpetually in the present moment. And they just see you, and they just are so adoring and happy that they're able to perpetually be in the present moment. And we really want to be like our pets in the present moment, being there with just kind of who we are and showing up as our best selves. So we are not our thoughts and feelings, and we get to decide who we are. Our thoughts and feelings don't get to do that, because our thoughts and feelings are based on so many different variables. If you think about it, how we're socialized, what we're taught in our family of origin, our self-perception, and I could go on and on and on, what shapes us. It could be our gender, our race, religion, etc. There are so many factors. So all our thoughts and feelings they allow us, and they give us and provide us with information about what's important to us. And then our values are what guides our behavior. So when we have disruptive thoughts, the 8 steps to take is, 1, we want to identify the thought and the feelings associated with the disruptive thought. So you could say something like, I'm having the thought, or my mind is telling me, and that gets you to the specific thought that you're having. And make sure it's a thought that it's not a feeling, because we do get the two confused. And a thought is an opinion or an assumption, and a feeling is really an experience of an emotion. So to really differentiate, and we could questions don't bring us the amount of affect. So I do want to say that. So an example of that is, I wonder what she thinks of me. That's not going to bring distress and a level of struggle. But if you say, she thinks I am a horrible person, that is what brings you that level of stress. So when you're thinking about your thoughts, make sure it's not in the form of a question, but it's in the form of a statement, and get to the crux of what the fear is. I'm scared I'm not going to be able, I'm scared I'm not going to be able to follow through on this. I'm worried that, she thinks that I'm judgmental, whatever the case is. The second thing you want to do is label the quality of the thought and say it out loud. So it could be judgment or worry or guilt or whatever it is that's coming to your mind. Like, say it, name it, hold yourself accountable for it. The third thing is to keep to the original thought. Now, why do I say that? Because our mind spirals. Again, we have one thought, which is, let's say, she doesn't like me. And then we say, oh, no, but maybe she does like me because actually today she was kind to me. And then the next thought follows is, no, she actually doesn't, because usually she doesn't invite me to go places and she'll leave me out. And you know what? Nobody really likes me. I don't feel likable at all. And on and on and on. Okay. And that could lead to very helpless, hopeless feelings. So when that happens, and it naturally does, we want to go back to the original thought. I'm worried that she doesn't like me. Okay. And just stay with that. And every time your mind segues, go back to the original thought. Okay. And sit on it. Just sit with it, really experience it. Think about how it feels in your body and in your mind without reacting. Take that moment. 4, connect to what the thought is evoking. Now, consider whether the thought is connecting or associating to a negative core belief. And that could be, I'm not good enough, for or anything like that. It could be connected to a worry, like I won't be accepted. It could also be an old narrative, something that you experienced in the past that's making that association. Other people's needs are more important than mine are, or I'll just listen and won't speak up. So it's likely, if you think about it, to be a familiar and recurring thought. And generally speaking, when it's a core negative belief, it tends to be a recurring thought. It could come in different variations, but it tends to have the same type of underlying theme to it. 5, imagine it passing by gently and compassionately. Now, I always say it's really helpful sometimes to close your eyes, really, or get into a space where you're able to really kind of sit with it. And sometimes we don't have that luxury. So if you don't, and that's okay too, is you could just sit with it, and think it in your mind without expressing it out loud. And you could imagine it passing by in a cloud or a leaf on a stream of water, whatever imagery that you could have in your mind. And it's helpful also to have it prior so that you could kind of go back to that. And I know when my mind is racing, and that happens to me sometimes when I'm feeling quite anxious, what I do, the imagery that I use, which has been really helpful for me, is a second hand on a clock. So I think about how slowly the second hand moves, and I calibrate my thinking to that second hand, and it allows me to really re-regulate my body and my mind when that happens. But you have to find what ideally works for you, of course. 6, notice the bodily sensations it's bringing up for you. A lot of us really hold our anxiety in our bodies in all different kinds of ways. And that makes sense because of the biology that I mentioned before, that it goes right to, again, our central nervous system. So when that happens, do a brief body scan. That's always helpful if you can't really locate where it is. Sometimes it's pretty intuitive because you feel it right in your gut, or you feel kind of belabored breathing, or whatever the case is. If it's not as intuitive, what you could do is a very, very quick body scan, and you go from the top of your head, all the way down to your feet, and just note if you're feeling any tension or tingling or throbbing or whatever's coming up for you, and just note that in your body. Sometimes also what you could do, which I do as well, is I'll actually have imagery of decompression. And that could be, let's say, kind of air coming out of a tea kettle, or a balloon, air coming out of a balloon, or whatever it is, the tension really kind of relieving itself in the moment. And then we want to deactivate the mind and the body. Now, how do we do that? Many people think that we could use stress management skills and we could just use them in the moment when it comes up. It doesn't work that way. Our body has to be trained that when times of stress comes, that it knows how to utilize these different skills. So that, again, if you're continually and constantly doing them and practicing them, your body knows when to turn them on. So you could do practices like grounding exercises. There's a wonderful app, which I love and I use a lot. It's called Insight Timer, which is 2 words, Insight Timer. It's a free app and it has over 500,000 guided meditations. You could do something on a specific topic. You could also use, they have instrumentals, they have nature sounds. It is vast, absolutely, absolutely vast. So I do recommend that app. You could also mention 5 things that you could use your senses, which again, we want to use our bodies because it kind of grounds us. So you could do 5 things that you see, 4 things that you feel, 3 things that you hear, 2 things that you smell, 1 thing that you taste. There's also breathing exercises, which we'll get to as well. And then the last is to take a moment of intentional self-compassion. Now, why is that so important? Because we don't do that. It's not intuitive to us. We don't learn how to be self-compassionate. So what does that mean? And I teach my patients to do this. And for some of them, it feels awkward and they say that it feels strange. I'll have them sometimes even look inside of a mirror. I have a mirror in my office and I'll ask them to look at themselves. And you could tell there's this grimace and this discomfort in their body, about looking at, because when we look in a mirror, we don't look at ourselves. We may check out how we're looking in our clothing, but we don't actually look in our own eyes and notice the humanism and notice empathy and compassion for ourselves. So we have to learn how to be empathetic and compassionate. And we don't also learn this typically from our parents because they weren't taught how to be, openly self-compassionate as well. So what do I mean by that? So let's say I'm doing a grounding exercise, which is, I could use, let's say, the butterfly, which mimics bilateral stimulation, which is very comforting, right? So if you tap, and you could try this right now if you want to, but if you tap your arms, okay, it's very soothing. And it really does, again, the rhythm, both of doing it and also the bilateral stimulation, because we're using both parts of our brain, the right and left hemisphere. And you could say something like, when I worry that she thinks that I'm judgmental, it really makes me feel sad. And it makes me concerned because I care about her so much. And I really care about our relationship. And when I think something is getting in between our relationship, it makes me really worried. And when I get worried, my mind takes me to all different places. And I imagine that our relationship is ending. And that really dysregulates my body. And it's understandable because I really care about her. And I really care about my relationships. I'm a really thoughtful and caring person. So that's just an example. And again, we could practice that. And I really do recommend practicing that. So what is mindfulness? And I'm going to kind of zoom through this because I see time and it's, so again, the definition by Jon Kabat-Zinn is, he says that awareness arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And then he adds, and then I sometimes add, in the service of self-understanding and wisdom, and as if your life depends on it. Okay, here's just a minute that I wanted to show you. Let's see if it kind of comes up.
There's a story, usually attributed to the Native American tradition, which illuminates different ways of paying attention. An elder talking to a child says, "I have two wolves fighting in my heart. One wolf is fearful, vengeful, envious, resentful, and deceitful. The other wolf is compassionate, loving, generous, truthful, peaceful." The child asks, "Which wolf will win the fight?" The elder responds, "The one I feed." That doesn't mean we try to deny or hurt or kill the angry wolf. If we did that, we'd end up in a long battle, all the while somehow making that wolf more powerful through our hostility and fear. Hating that wolf sucks the strength right out of us. Instead, we calmly pay attention to the angry wolf and let go of believing they have the answers. If we can do that, they end up lying down next to us, no longer an enemy. We help strengthen the kind and loving wolf, giving it nourishment and support so that we can follow it. That peaceful wolf can become our steady companion and show us the way through all kinds of different life experiences. Restful or chaotic, enjoyable or disappointing experiences may come and go, but we can have a guide with us through it all. This is what mindfulness can help you do. Mindfulness allows us to see our thoughts and feelings as they are beginning. It's very powerful to know what we're feeling as we're feeling it, know what we're thinking as we're thinking it. With mindfulness, we can choose what will strengthen and bring into action, and we can choose what we will gently let go of. We don't have to be at the mercy of old habits or old ways of thinking or old ways of being. We are empowered. It just takes practice.
I'm going to just go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, there we go. So I'm not going to get into, I do have, the physical effects of mindfulness and meditative practice. And by the way, meditation is a type of mindfulness practice. So I do want to say that, which also gets, people get confused about that as well. There are thousands of mindfulness practices. I teach that in a full semester. So that's 15 weeks of a 2-hour class. So you can imagine there's a lot to be said about that. I'm not going to get into it. If we had more time, obviously I would. So what I did want to get, and there's all different ways to, I listed here some mindfulness practices. I did want to show you a breathing exercises. And this is a really wonderful way, again, to dysregulate the body and get us back into our present moment awareness. So I'm going to practice it with you. We'll just take a couple of breaths. It's called the 4-7-8, and this is just one. I listed a whole bunch of different types of breathing exercises. If you go on the web, there's, again, a plethora of different types of breathing exercises. It's about finding the one that works for you. I particularly like this one because I find it's very immediate. The wonderful thing about breathing exercises is it opens up our airways, and it automatically, just because of our physiology, again, reduces the heart rate, because often when we're activated, our heart rate, again, intensifies, and it's sometimes hard for us to really get grounded. So if you could kind of sit up straight, and I'm going to ask you, we're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and breathe out for 8. I'm going to just do a couple of them, and then I'm going to end off our workshop with a very short guided meditation. Okay. So if you could breathe in for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and slowly out 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, in for 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, hold 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and out slowly 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So we only did 2. Obviously, if I was doing this with you, we would do a bunch more, but you should be able to feel, again, your heart rate, right, slowing down, and also just the expansion in your chest. And that really helps to ground us. So if you could sit up straight, we're going to do a real quick guided meditation. Okay. And if you feel comfortable enough, if you could close your eyes. And this is a practice, again, around anxiety. Okay. So as you're sitting there, I just want you to pay attention to your breath. Again, we're just going to be conscious of our body right here in this moment. And there's going to be moments where your mind wanders off, which is expected. Sometimes we're thinking, planning, and allow it to just be compassionately and gently. And when you notice it, to come back to your breath, again, without forcing it. And notice your body grounded, your feet strongly planted on the ground, your back with a straight posture. And Khalil Gibran stated, our anxiety does not come from thinking about the future, but from wanting to control it. So take the time now to just allowing yourself to be without having to control anything. Your body to release tension. And if we want to conquer our worries, anxieties, it's about living in the present moment. We don't have to let our thoughts and feelings control us. We're in charge of our own behavior and how we want to be. And Stephen Hayes says, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So we're talking about going out of our comfort zone and challenging our beliefs, our behavior, and bring up either a behavior, a habit that would be really wonderful to shift. Something you worry about. Imagine shifting your energy. Just noticing it, distancing from the tension, just kind of looking at that. It can't hurt you, it can't harm you. It's just there. Could be a passing thought, passing feeling. Just observing it without judgment, without judging yourself. Surrender to what is. Let go of what was. And have faith in what will be. Say to yourself the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Again, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And it is important to remember that we cannot become what we need to be by remaining where we are. Imagine the change that you want to happen. Imagine the challenge that you want to achieve. Passing the finish line. To others, whatever it may be. And imagine giving yourself a warm, connected hug of encouragement. Allow that to enter your body and surrender to the warmth and to the care. And Zig Ziglar says, difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations. The best is yet to come. And you have an opportunity to cultivate that for yourself. One deep breath through your nose and out through your mouth. And one last time, in through your nose and out through your mouth. Count to 3, and when you're ready, you could open your eyes. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you. So, this is unfortunately the conclusion. I know it went by really quickly, and there's so much more to share. Sorry it was so short. I know we do have to stop. So I thank you so much for participating. I also did want to say that my new book that just came out is called Ace Your Life, Unleash Your Best Self and Live the Life You Want. And it's predicated under acceptance, compassion, and empowerment. And it really will give you the foundation of what we're speaking to, and a lot of skills and a lot of tools. And it, at the end of each chapter, has a guided meditation as well with a QR code. So I invite you, to again, live the life you want and live a meaningful, purposeful life, however you cultivate that for yourself. So nice to meet all of you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Shall we come out of screen share so everyone can see?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry about that.
Not at all, not at all. Just lovely for everyone to see you fully. Just want to say a huge thank you. We're already getting thank yous in the chat box. Lots of really fantastic positive comments. I mean, credit to you for packing in such a mountain of value in such a short space of time. And especially, I fully agree. Anxiety is a topic you can delve into for days, weeks, months. So you've done an incredible job at really distilling the fundamentals for us. So thank you so much for that. And I love how it's all rooted in evidence-based research, practical strategies.
Absolutely.
We love at Karma, with our training philosophy too. So thank you for that. We'll just say as well, the fact that this is recorded, again, just to remind you all, it will be on our YouTube channel. The great thing is you put so much amazing content in your presentations. So even the bits that you whisked past, people can go back, look at the recording, pause just to read through all the amazing value that Michelle shared. So please do that.
I do want to say also, I didn't even get, to show resources that I put on the PowerPoint. So I can, if you want, I'm happy to share. I did a whole resource list for both mindfulness and also anxiety resources. So I'm happy if you want to put it on your website. I'm happy to provide that for the, for any listeners if you want those resources. Of course, I also have them on my website as well, but I'm happy to offer them to the audience.
Thank you so much. So much, even more value. It's incredible. And you know what I'll do, Michelle? I'll share the resources that directly link to your website, and I'll put it underneath this video on the YouTube channel, and happy to share it, in our own comms as well. And if there's anything else you want to share for how people can get in touch with you, I know your book is just out. Congratulations. That's amazing. Anything else you want to share?
Yeah. Well, my website is the best place because it has all my Psychology Today blogs. And you could also, of course, if if you become a subscriber, you could get all my blogs, and they're on numerous different topics. I just wrote, actually for Mother's Day, I wrote one in the US on perpetual mother's guilt. I also do a weekly guided meditation on my YouTube channel. So if you subscribe, you'll get every Thursday, you'll get a guided meditation, and again, on all different topics. So I'm always sharing content all the time. I just really, really want to help others. So that's my vision and my mission, and I'm happy to do that all the time.
Certainly an empath. That's beautiful. Thank you. I mean, the comments are just incredible. We've got meditation was super soothing. Please share the recording. Thank you so much. We've got, I want to listen to it again. Please share your website. So everyone's clearly loved it. I'm so pleased it's resonated. If there are any questions, please do feel free to share. We can very quickly, answer, or, Michelle can answer. But we will, like I say, just look out for the newsletter that we'll send out tomorrow. That will share the link, but you can just go straight to our YouTube channel. That's on our website. The link's at the bottom of the homepage, and it will be live tomorrow. And we'll share all the resources, the links that Michelle has referenced today, underneath that video, so you can go straight to Michelle's website, check out her book, all that good stuff as well. So if there's no other, Laurie says this is terrific as well. Thank you, Laurie. If there's no other comments or questions, I just want to say a huge thank you again to Michelle. It's been an absolute pleasure to collaborate with you today, and thank you for gifting us with this session.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Take good care. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Bye.